widely accepted that speedway racing in Australia began right here at this Maitland Showground west of Newcastle in 1923. John Hoskins was in Sydney just about completely broke. He emptied his pockets out at Central Railway Station ticket office, plonked all his money down and said to the girl on the ticket office, "Give me a ticket for as far as this lot will take me." And he ended up at East Maitland and got a job here as the secretary of the East Maitland Showground. He bought himself a motorbike and went to the committee and proposed that they hold speedway racing here for motorbikes, but it was rejected. Not deterred, John got 20 of his mates on their motorbikes, and one weekend they started doing laps around here. And the committee members were at the showground and heard the noise and came over. John had risked his job to do this, but within a month or so, speedway racing was being held at this very place, the first speedway racing in Australia. TQ race cars were also introduced later on, and the place became hugely popular. There was not much in the way of safety fencing. In fact, there was one crash here right in front of this grandstand, and the motorbike rider went over the fence and into the crowd. As John started to withdraw from the place, he was offered £3,000 for his half share in the Showground Speedway. But as he says, I turned it down and went back to Sydney and lost all my money all over again. The tradition is preserved and lives on in today's Maitland Speedway festivals, which frequently celebrate this most historic Australian motor racing venue. This artwork is all that remains of the Head and Greta Speedway west of Newcastle. The venue started in 1960 and then cars were added in 1969 and it became the premier venue for Speedway in New South Wales. Big prize money and great organisation and promotion drew drivers and spectators from all over New South Wales who travelled long distances to get here. People just loved Head and Greta Speedway. But it wasn't down this road, it was over the other side of the highway here. It then had a huge makeover and became Twin City Speedway until the land was sold for housing in 2002. Let's go and have a look. It's a bit sad, it's just a housing estate. If some of these proud new homeowners ever dig down about 2 metres, they're in for a bit of a shock. Because after the last race meeting at Head and Greta Speedway, 40 demo derby cars were crushed by a bulldozer and buried in this estate. Huge A4 pages crammed with the personal anecdotes and experiences of the people who raced these tracks. Easy to read, very large font. the most comprehensive and lavishly colour illustrated work on this subject ever. Here on the Old Punt Road in Tomago, just north of Newcastle, is where the Newcastle International Aerodrome used to be. It was built by the Laverick brothers, who owned a shipyard just next door. And when Peter Gabriel took over in 1976, it became the centre of regional speedway in New South Wales, and it hosted many Australian championships. Continual crowds of 15,000 people at a meeting proved how popular this place was. And in a city then notorious for illegal street racing, when they put a burnout pad in, well, the place went off every Friday night. Remarkably, and despite a hectic race program, there was never a fatality at Tomago Speedway. But when the final landowner got an offer too good to refuse, the place was turned into this bland industrial park. There was a speedway car in virtually half the automotive workshops in Newcastle. I know this because I used to run a parts delivery business, and I saw all the cars in the corner. When this place closed, I had nowhere to run. It also decimated the New South Wales Speedway series that had circulated widely right around regional New South Wales. It sort of just took the heart out of it. And when Tomago closed, for everyone in Newcastle, with a speedway car, it became an issue of, well, I got this car, where on earth have I got to go to race it now? In the very last days of Tomago, after the speedway had closed, my Newcastle Car Club got permission to run a carnacross here. This used to be the grass parking area where all the spectator cars parked. We ran a carnacross and zigzagged all over this, went round the back of the speedway and around. And I won it first outright in my Mark 1 VW Golf with both of its Webers on full noise. So how's that for a bit of history? I won the last event, probably, that was ever run here at Tomago. In the 1920s and 30s, this Salty Creek recreation area was a popular Newcastle picnic spot on the banks of the Cockle Creek. In 1953, the Mayfield Motorcycle Club leased this Catholic church land as a circuit. The church got part of the gate takings in exchange. It drew big crowds for many years, and in 1965 the Australian short course title were run here, and they were run a number of times after that here as well. The cars always raced regardless of weather. There's some really wet meetings, and TQs were very popular. On hot days, the kids would jump in Cockle Creek and get refreshed. Everything's been wiped out and demolished. There's no sign of the track here whatsoever. When and why that was done is unclear. I suspect the age of the houses up there suggests that the Catholic Church did a little subdivision on the edge, and that spelled the end of the track. But by 1975, this place had been returned to just being a park, and it's now under the authority of the Hunter Water Board, and it looks like they're doing absolutely nothing with it. To avoid paying, the local lads would ride their push bikes down on the other side of Cockle Creek, and then they'd swim across. There were two tricks to it. The first one was, make sure your fags don't get wet, and the second one was, don't get caught, because there were marshals out looking for you. And there was one guy who was notorious. If he saw the kids swimming across, he'd wait till they got over, and then he'd tell them to go back. Can you imagine, though, if you got away with it, you're wet from head to toe, you're cold and you're shivering, and you're sitting up watching the speedway. Bit obvious sitting there, saturated all over, how you got in. Is this a coincidence or something more? Just a block away from Salty Creek Speedway, where the main and most favourite cars were TQs, is Penrose Street, and Alan Penrose was a champion TQ racer, father of Wayne Penrose. Well, even if it's just a coincidence, Wayne, I can show you where it is if you want to come and nick it.